Yo, 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 it's your boy Mark Goodman, aka the voice box of the block. I'm back with another one. It's good to be here, man. It's great to be here, man. We've been busy. I've been busy, but I've been getting it done like I always do because I'm providing the best services for the upstate Greenwood, South Carolina. What's going on? On over to my guest, man. What's going on? It's my man, Samuel. What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to having a dope conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Black real estate dialogue. For those you don't know, that's the topic of the day. That's the part of the day. That's the informative information I'm finna give y'all today. And I had to dig deep in my bag and find a wonderful guest who started all this wonderful creation and have a wonderful community behind them, a wonderful support behind them. And I want you to introduce yourself, brother. Introduce yourself because they tired of me talking already.
Funny. Thank you so much. So my name is Samuel Dolciné, go by Sam. I am the host of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast, highlighting the stories of Black real estate investors throughout the whole country. So we've been going at it for almost 2 years. October will make 2 years. And I also invest in real estate. I invest long distance. So I live in California, invest in Ohio. We have a lot of other cool things going on. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, currently residing in LA. I've been in LA for about 5 years. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, before I get started, man, how you like it out in LA, man?
Oh, it's great. It's great, man. The weather's good. The traffic is not, but the weather's great. Yeah, I like it a lot out here.
Yeah, as far as commuting, do you actually drive or you take the taxi or the cab? Do you drive
Yeah.
first? I mean,
So I drive. Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I
crazy.
drive. Yeah.
That's crazy. 'Cause I know in the bigger cities, a lot of people just take the sub or whatever. I ain't never been to California, but I figure a lot of people when they go into town, and I mean go in the city, they don't really drive unless you have to.
Yeah. And LA is interesting because the public transit is not that good, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah. So most people out here pretty much drive. I mean, they have like buses, trains and stuff, but it's nowhere near like a lot of the other big cities. It's not on par with the other big cities like, Chicago, New York. Like the public transit is not nowhere near that good out here.
Word. So, so,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into real estate, how it all started. I think we're going to start from the beginning because we don't want to hit them too hard. So we want to just kind of tell people how you got into it and how you been able to get where you are.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of years back, I kind of had an epiphany, if you will. So I was, at work and I was looking at my retirement plan, and they have these calculators where you are able to, see what your retirement will look like, assuming you make the 3% raise, whatever. And I realized, wow, by the time I'm at the retirement age, at the time I was working in education, I'm like, this is not going to be enough money. And I need to figure out a way to make over the long term to start building up some income because I'm just not going to be able to live well. And so that kind of sparked it for me. And then for the next year, I was just reading everything I could about real estate and doing everything I could to learn, reading books and all types of stuff, trying to connect with people online and stuff like that. And there was one thing I found. I found that I couldn't really find stories of people who look like me, who I could relate to.
Right.
And so around the time that I decided to start the podcast was around the same time I was getting ready to make my first investment. And so a good friend of mine, I told him like, hey, man, what do you think if I started a podcast about Black real estate investors? He said, do it. There was no conversation. There's nothing long. He said, do it.
Yeah.
So he's my designer. He does all the design. And, around the time, basically the same week that the podcast came out is the same week that I closed on my first property, which I ended up buying out of state. And so, that's kind of how I got into it. That's like why I got into it. And for me, it's like a long-term thing. Like I don't flip or do any of those things. But, for me, it's like, my goal is to really build my portfolio over time so that when I am of an older age, I'm not just dependent on like my employer's retirement plan or Social Security. Like I have additional options when I get older for me and for my family.
Right. And I want to stop you there because we're finna get into real estate. We're finna dig deep on some of the ways, because there's several different ways we can start getting into the real estate business. But I had a question when you talked about your retirement plan and sitting down and really thinking that I started a vending business. I started a vending business and I enjoy it, man. I actually have 6 locations now, and the
Nice.
reason why I started, because I had an epiphany. I asked myself how much I'm going to be worth when I'm 65. And when I saw the pace I was going, I really didn't like the pace. Kind of like what you just said. And before we get into the real estate, it's very important that young Black men at some point ask themselves how much I'm going to be worth when I'm 65. That is, and if you, when you really look at that question, if you believe in your script, and you be like, okay, then they come up with great plans. You come up with great ideas like yourself. I mean, am I right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely important to think long term because, provided you have health and, you're able to live a long life, you want to live well. You don't
Right.
want to, be in a situation where you can't really enjoy life, when you can't really take care of your basic needs, especially when you're older.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, there are several different ways that people can get into real estate, but you got it in a unique way, or a way that most people don't know. So enlighten people how you got in as far as out of state real estate, buying property out of state.
Yeah, definitely. So I live in LA. As most know, like California is really expensive. And as far as buying property, there are a couple ways to go about it. Like you could do like FHA, pay 3.5% down, get a property, or you can use NACA. There's different programs you can use. At the time, I wasn't aware of any of these. So I'm like, look, I don't make enough to invest here. So I got to figure something else out. And I was looking online. I discovered that people were investing in cheaper markets. So like in the Midwest or some parts of the South. And I'm like, wow, like you could do that. I didn't know people could do that. I just assumed like if you buy property, you got to live by it or something like that.
Right.
And so, I started doing a lot of research and like connecting with different people online. And I'm like, all right, cool. I think this is something that I want to do. And so, I heard the name of the podcast. I heard a podcast and they had these people who could like basically talk to you if you're interested in investing out of state, because they had like connections to people or the companies who were selling to out of state investors. And so I got hooked up with a company in Ohio,
Right.
who basically flip properties to investors. So properties that are in ready-made condition, all that stuff. And so, I went out there to Ohio. They took me on like a market tour. So show me different properties that were like rehab, properties they sold, properties they just started working on, properties they had coming up in the pipeline. And so, at that time when I was there wasn't anything there wasn't anything in the inventory that I liked. And a couple months later, they said, hey, we got these two. I actually got my second choice property. And I did the whole process remotely. So, the inspection, appraisal, all that stuff I did remotely. But, if we take it back, I spent a whole year preparing. So I knew what to expect. Like I bought books. I knew what to expect at each point of the process. So I felt a lot more comfortable. Because, I had the education, I had the information.
Right.
And so for me, that's kind of why I decided to start out of state. I would say, if you live in an area where you can get something, I would, like a multifamily. If you live in an area with multifamilies, you can live in one, rent the others out. If it's possible in your market, I would recommend starting there. If you live in like a super expensive city and it's not possible for you, investing out of state is something to consider.
Now, when you invest in out of state, there's a lot of pros and cons. Can you kind of go over some of the pros and cons and something people might face? Because for one, a person might say, like, I'm out of state. How do I know this property is good or not? What are some of the things that the pros and cons?
Yeah, so the pros I would say is affordability, depending where you're coming from. So if you're coming from like a coastal city, maybe like the Northeast, some parts of the Northeast or the West Coast, it's going to be way cheaper. So that's one pro. Then I guess a con would be, depending on your personality type, if you're not the type of person who can get things done through other people, right, investing out of state is not for you. Like just right now, like I'm going through, I just finished like a rehab that took a long time. and I'm showing, people are visiting my unit, but I have someone who's helping me out. So every time she hosts somebody, I pay her. But it's like, I'm coordinating, right? Like prospective tenants are hitting me up. I'm coordinating with her. Like I'm doing a lot of the work. But I'm trusting her to like go open the house, check on things like that. So if you're not somebody who can get things done through other people, it's probably not for you. Even like landscaping, like it's vacant right now. So I got a grass guy who's there. He sends me pictures when it's done, so on and so forth. Like I had to, do video pics, all this stuff for like rehab. But it's trusting. Well, it's verifying, but getting things done through other people.
Right.
Another con I would say is you're not there, right? So if you're a handy person and you want to like go and fix stuff, depending on how far it is, it's not going to be feasible for you. But again, like it's about getting things done through other people. So if you are somebody who's very, very hands-on, and wants to be in close proximity to where you are investing at, it's probably not a good idea for you. So that's like, and I think also, at a certain point, like you don't really know what's going to happen. You just have to trust that things are going to go well, but you have less control, so to speak, because you're not physically there. So those are some things to consider. But again, the main pro is like affordability.
Especially when you find an area that's much cheaper than the current area you living in. Such as, you know what I mean? So I would say where I'm from, the area that I stay in now is we would say probably more expensive than where I originally from. So, but at the same time, mine is still in state. You are talking out of state, so it's a much different situation. But I guess you have to be not a person, not saying like the girl that you say help you. Now, you know her personally, or it's something that you just called around and you found a person that is willing to do it. Because that's the main thing. I figured that if you get someone that's on your team, it has to be someone that you can trust.
Yeah. So the woman who helps me, I actually met her on Bigger Pockets, which is a real estate website for those who don't know. So I met her on there. I just saw her in the forums a couple of years ago, and we sent messages back and forth. And even before I met her in person, I met her in person last November when I went to go visit. But she's done drive-bys for me, like going to take pictures, different stuff. Like she's helped me out quite a bit. So we just built a rapport over the last couple of years. And yeah, she's like my right hand. She helps me out a lot.
It's a team effort.
Yeah. So, I mean, the internet is great because, you can meet some people who can really help you out. Some who you may never meet in person, so I'm sure, a lot of people who like contractors and different stuff that I'm probably never going to meet them, but, you can still get things done to other people and build some good relationships. So, if someone does invest out of state, it's very important to have boots on the ground and someone who can go and check on things when you need them to be checked on. So thankfully, I found that.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, and that's something to keep in mind as to my viewers as they have these ideas of trying to buy property out of state. You got to have a team around you and you got to have a team that's all on the same court, on the same page. And as far as the guidelines and restrictions vary from state to state on how you do this?
As far as like investing?
Yes, out of state, yes.
No,
property out of state, getting property out of state. Are there guidelines and restrictions?
Not that I'm aware of. Like, somebody wants to buy, like, as long as if you're getting financing, as long as you have the financing, it's fine. Or if you're paying cash, as long as you got the cash, it's fine. Like in my experience, I'm not aware of like, someone not selling to you or something because you're from out of state.
Right.
Yeah.
And I look on your page a lot. You always talk about people having this myth about it's expensive to invest. You know what I mean? And that's true. A lot of people look at something and be like, "Oh man, it's just too expensive," and they don't know that there's cheaper ways to invest. Can you elaborate on some of those things?
Yeah, definitely. So, I used to think real estate was like this big, unreachable thing that was just reserved for rich people. But there are a lot of programs out there that can allow people to invest for not as much as you think. So one is FHA, which is, Federal Housing Authority program, which will allow you to put as low as 3.5% down on a property. A lot of the guests on my show, they use that to get their portfolio started. There's also the NACA program, NACA, which allows you to get into a property with 0% down.
Right.
So there are things out there. It's just a matter of being aware of them. You're going to need some level of money, but, it's not necessarily 20% down on a property, which, depending on probably everywhere for everybody where you live at, but based on cost of living and so forth, like 20% is not cheap. And so the myth I would say is that you always have to pay 20%, but that's not true.
Right. So when we looking into this and we talk about the money, we always, because that's the bottom line. Do you have the money? And a lot of people say, where you get the money from? I heard you talk about one time where you got your money from. I think when you first time you started it. Can you talk about that? Because it was a unique way, and I think people need to really look at this, because everybody has a 401k that's working, I think. So go ahead.
Yeah. So for me at the time, again, I was working in education. Obviously, people in education don't make a lot of money.
Right.
And so I was trying to figure out different things I could do. So one of the things is I was paying a lot in student loans. And so what I did was I put my payments into forbearance, which means that for a period of 12 months, I didn't have to pay anything. So I was able to save all that money for about a year while I studied and figured out what it is I wanted to do. The second thing I did is I called my retirement plan. I said, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. I need some of this money. What are my options? And basically what they told me is that you can either withdraw all of it and pay X, Y, Z in taxes, or you could take a loan against it and pay it back within a 5-year period to yourself. Right. And so I decided to take a loan against it. So, not necessarily saying I would recommend either of those strategies to people, but that's what I did. That's what I had to do in order to make it happen. Because to be quite honest, saving my W-2 income, it would have taken me years to come up with enough money to do anything, to do anything anywhere. So, I just had to be creative and, get it done that way.
Yeah, man, I ain't gonna lie, man. I think I bought my first vending machine with my HSA health savings account. It was just sitting there building up. You could take it out. A lot of people don't know that you can withdraw it out. And, and that's, like I said, that's some of the strategies. And people don't know, man, there's money that you have around you especially if you're working. And a lot of people don't know how to reach those things, like digging in your 401k, borrowing from yourself and paying yourself back. I think you'd rather borrow from yourself than borrow from the bank, right?
It can help.
So as far as some of the things that you have to offer as your courses, as well as many other things as far as on your Instagram, because you're so full with insane. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I do have a course, a beginner's guide to buying your first out-of-state property. Basically, what I found is that, it took me so long, to figure out how to do things, and I'm still figuring stuff out. Right. But what I realized is that if I had just some simple instructions for how to just get to the first door, my life would have been a lot easier. I would have avoided a lot of mistakes. And so in the course is just my experience. I go through, basically every single aspect of how to do it. And I go through case studies as well. So deal that worked out for me and 2 that didn't. And I go through why. We go through inspection reports, analyzing deals, how to find deals, stuff like that. And so that's the first offering that I have. And, a lot of people, thankfully, have been able to receive that education. The second thing I have is the Bread Real Estate Investing community. And basically inside of this community, we have guest speakers who come and teach twice a month from various areas of real estate. It's one thing to listen to the podcast, but it's another thing to be able to actually learn from these people and then get your questions answered. And again, it's just to provide what I didn't really have, which was a place to ask questions, to look at content, to really directly ask and learn from experienced people in various areas of real estate. So those are the main 2 things.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but so you're saying that everybody that's coming in teaching are not necessarily go about it the way you go about it. You have other real estate people that's teaching different ways actually to get into real estate, right?
Exactly. So you have like people talking about flipping, people talking about working with contractors, people talking about like house hacking, construction, wholesaling, all type of stuff. So it's just overall like real estate education.
Right, right. Because I'm gonna tell you, like me and my wife, we were first time homeowners, right? But we didn't. The thing about us, we bought a beginner home, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and it wasn't our dream home, purposely. You see what I'm saying? Because we didn't want to move in our dream home because we want to use this home as an asset to pay for our dream home. Because she has actually some land that she has that's given to her. So that was kind of how I was going to get into real estate, just using the home that I'm already in and renting it out, maybe trying to figure the best way to go about it. And I wanted to ask you about that while you're here. Should I rent it out or should I sell it?
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on your goals, right? So, you know, when the time comes, I would say just evaluate what you could receive in income if you did rent it out, and evaluate how much you would get if you sold it. But I would also say like have a plan with that money, because if there's not a plan for whatever profit you would make, life happens, it's just going to be gone. So I would say either one is not wrong. I would say just evaluate either option and see and just make sure there's a plan. So just evaluate which plan for rent, for holding it, or for selling it, which plan will kind of match your goals. But I would say if you sell, like just make sure you have a plan for the money. Otherwise, things happen, and
you're right.
You'll be asking where it is.
Yeah, all the time. If you don't move money, money will move itself. It seems like, right? And I wanted to. I know you said something because you was giving a lot of gems, but speaking back to things when people get into these businesses such as real estate and it don't go well, people don't talk about the other side. Talk about that a little bit. The failures or the flips that didn't go right. Talk about that. And a lot of people, first thing they do is quit. Just talk about the people that they got to continue to see it through.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I'm going through it right now. My last tenant moved out about 2 months ago, and I had to do a lot of work. So let's see. I've took the carpet out because her dogs kind of had their way with it, and they didn't have them using the restroom outside. Right. So I had to take all the carpets out. I put vinyl flooring on. I had to do a bunch of small repairs around the property as well. And so I found a good contractor. She got the job done, but if you go back to what I said about having boots on the ground, she did the work, but I had somebody looking behind her. And so she ended up fixing and things she missed, like paint. She painted as well, but there's things she's missed. But me having somebody out there to go and check on her work, right, she went back and fixed some of those things. But all that to say, like the rehab process took a little bit longer than expected. And I had tenants. I had a tenant who I approved who flaked basically. They just didn't. I canceled their lease. I think only one out of the two signed the lease. Thankfully, that happened before I put them in the property, because they were taking a long time sending the deposit and all these things. But the thing is, I'm learning a lot, right? I'm learning a lot. One of my past guests, he's like my real estate mentor, and he invests out of state too. He lives here in LA. He has like 20 plus units in Virginia. So I talk to him several times a week, just like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, this, what's going on? Like, he's guiding me through a lot of the process. So I'm learning a lot. Probably gonna be another course that comes out of this, but I'm definitely learning a lot. And I mean, the thing is, like, real estate is not like, how can I explain it? It's advertised as this super passive, sexy thing, but it's not really passive, Even when you have a property manager, you got to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Like, you still have to make sure things are getting done. Right. So, it's a great reward at the end. Like, once this is rented out, the market rent has increased. So I'll be receiving more income, but, it's not always that easy, like it's easy once you have somebody you have a good tenant, but the period in between or rehabbing and doing different things, like it can be difficult and it can be costly. Right. But, the way I'm looking at it is I'm just learning more. It's making me a better and sharper investor. and it's forcing me also to like reach out for help and, lean upon people who are more experienced than me and who are able to do this a little bit better than I am.
Yeah. Now I saw a crazy show. Keep me in mind when you was talking about out of state and people doing things for you. Now, when you have tenants, I don't know if you ever encountered this over your time doing this, but if you have tenants that ain't paid and don't want to leave, do you have people go out there and make them leave? Because I'm sure you don't ask the woman to do that. So do you have services? You have to, like I seen a TV show where someplace where that's all they did. Like people weren't able to pay their rent. So they came out and like, in a very aggressive way, y'all gotta get out of here. Do you use those services as well?
So fortunately, I haven't gone through that. Last tenant, she left on her own. Like we actually ended her lease early. She left on her own. I didn't have any issues like that. So, not sure how to advise on those kind of situations. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Because that'd have been crazy. Like, because some people, I guess, I don't know, some people, use those services. And I'm figuring like, only if you not in that location. Because I was watching the TV shows, it was crazy, but they was kicking tenants out, and they was called from the landlord, and I was like, man, that's something that you might have to do. Hopefully, you don't have to do it.
Hopefully not.
but moving right on, man. Can you give? Let's say you got a person out there, my viewers, man, that's like, okay, I'm thinking about getting in. I don't know about out of state investing. There's some other ways that you can invest, man, with property, if they don't want to do the out-of-state investing.
Yeah. So I would say, look into FHA, look into NACA, and just like learn, don't put pressure on yourself to act before you're ready, at a certain point, you have to take some action, but Absolutely. Just focus on educating yourself as much as possible. And, what you're supposed to do, it'll resonate with you. You'll find a strategy that resonates with you. So I'll say just educate yourself as much as possible. Don't put pressure on yourself. And you'll figure out eventually what strategy you want to go with. But, if you need some direction, I would say look into FHA, look into NACA, see what the opportunities are, where you live, and then go from there.
Right. So what your location is probably the biggest thing too in investing, because you have to be able to afford the properties that you're looking at, right?
That's right. Yeah, you definitely don't want to buy more house than you can afford.
Yeah.
A lot of people get approved for a certain amount and they get a property at that amount they're approved for, when in fact, if you look at their expenses or look at what you take home, it's too much money. So you don't necessarily have to max out what you're approved for.
Yeah, when I got approved, I was like, I can't afford that. Bring me back. So I got into reality, like, because I guess when you get approved for something like that, you get excited. Oh man, I'm approved for such amounts of dollars, and you haven't looked at your expenses and say, I really can't afford that. And a lot of people fall into that space, and then you know what I mean. And I think you get into a rat race when you get in that space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree.
Now, some of the books that you've read, can you give some people some information on the books before we leave, man? Because I don't want to make sure, because a lot of people around me read and I say, hey man, what kind of books do you read? What kind of books do you read, man?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. So one book I would say people should read is Black Fortunes. So it's a story of, I think, 5 African Americans who became millionaires directly after slavery. Wow. So I'll say that one is like more of like an inspiration book. Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice is a book that I like as well. I believe it's by Dennis Kimbrough. There's definitely more books, but those are 2 that come to top of mind that I'll recommend people checking out.
Word. Well, but there it is, man. I'm so thankful that you was able to stop. I'm so thankful that we was able to get it done, man. I know I've served my viewers well. A lot of great information coming from the Black real estate, man. Before I let you go, can you tell the viewers where they can contact you, your website and everything else before we go, man, before we wrap it up, man? Tell everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're interested in following what we have going on or tap into any of the resources, you can follow me on Instagram at Black Real Estate Dialogue. You can also follow me or go to our website, blackrealestatedialogue.com, and everything you need, you'll definitely be able to find it there.
Well, there it is, man. There it is. My boy Sam, man, thank you so much, man.
Yes, thank you.
Black Real Estate is on the move. please don't skip South Carolina, man. We need this information, especially from somebody that look like us, man. Please stop by. We love you. It's your boy Mark Goodman, and we out. Peace,
Thank
bro.
you, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, bro.
No matter the topic, whatever it is, then you know that we got you. We spread all the knowledge. We talk about politics, even the gossip. You can hear us on Spotify or tune in to YouTube. You even can watch us. I know we got haters. I can promise you one thing that we never stopping. It's the Good Guy Podcast. I ain't bragging, but we are the greatest. It's the Good Guy Podcast.